you've been feeling stuck and uninspired and you know that you want to do some kind of creative project but you're not sure what to work on next, maybe you just need to get out into nature, like properly outside, like off the couch. One of my favorite ways to get out of my head is to get out of my house. So we're going to go for a nature walk today, and we're not going to think too much about the outcome. We're not searching for anything. We're just enjoying the fresh air. If anything looks pretty, we're going to probably take a photo of it or a video of it, and we're just going to see what comes up. If nothing comes up, fine. Maybe it'll come up later. The idea is to remove the pressure, have a nice time, and if something comes out of it, great. I mean, really, how could you not be inspired by nature? Even if the inspiration is just, let's get into this more often, you know? So lace up your shoes. Let's go. We've gone outside. We've seen the sights. We've listened to the noises. We've breathed in fresh air. I really loved the yellow flowers that we saw on the walk. They remind me of, and I just have a lot of happy memories for me, those kinds of flowers, like this time of year. They just make me feel happy. Since I've been home, I've been looking at some inspiration. I found some artworks where it's kind of, the landscape is cut into layers and then they're kind of put on an accordion piece of cardboard so that you have kind of depth in your artwork. And I really liked the bridge with the stream running underneath, the brook running underneath, and then the flowers on the side. So I think I'm going to try and recreate that, cut out some shapes, and let's see what we end up with. I'm excited.
So start off with your scrap piece of paper and plan out your different layers. For mine, I did a background, then I did the tree layer, the bridge layer, the flower layer, and lastly the cover layer. Then I went through with my beautiful watercolour paper and I divided that up into equal rectangles to make my different layers. I also cut out a couple of spares. Then for my first layer, that was my background layer, I loaded it up with water so I could do a light wash for the river. And then I went through with some medium to deep green as the base layer for the trees. I didn't want to make it too dark, but I wanted to have a little bit of wiggle room to then do some lighter trees on the next layer. When I got my paper for my next layer, I sketched out where the river and the trees sat so I'd have a bit of a guide. Then I went in with a fine watercolour brush and started painting my palm trees because those were the bits that I was most excited about. I just love palm trees. I didn't have too much of a plan, so I just got to work making a few different trees and going from there. This is a nifty little paint palette that I got, and I find it good for watercolours because you can save your watercolour combinations when you're mixing a few colours together. I kept on going through and adding lighter and darker bits, the lighter bits where the sun was hitting and the darker bits where there was thicker foliage. I didn't want the whole thing to be covered, but I just wanted some interest and some texture for this layer. Now at this stage, I will tell you, I could have done these layers better. I later watched a tutorial on doing these tunnel books, and they said to leave a small, maybe 1/2 centimetre border around the whole edge of each layer, and that will make it easier when we get to the end step and we're sticking it all together. I didn't know this, so I just followed my heart. Now we're onto the bridge. You absolutely don't have to measure out to make an even bridge. I just knew that it was going to irritate me if I didn't have evenly spaced rungs in my bridge. Now onto the flowers. I knew that I wanted them coming in from either side, so I started off with a medium golden yellow, and I knew that I could add some more ochre tones to add some depth and shading. One of the things I love about these flowers is their shaggy kind of leaves, so I wasn't too precious about how I was doing the leaves. It was more about the feeling of the leaves than the precise detail. So again, it's really helpful to know roughly where your other layers sit as you go onto each layer, so you know what's going to be covered and what's going to be showing. You don't need to fill up all of the space. I just did most of the space, and then you'll see later on I go back in and fill in the gaps with a bit of a wash of colour. So it's not stark white and it's got something going on. Going back in with a darker golden ochre colour to do shading on the petals and also the centre of the flowers. Next, we're up to carefully cutting your layers out. I would not recommend trying to do really fine, intricate details because it will take you so long. If that's your vibe, absolutely go for it. But if I ever make a tunnel book again, I will probably do some easier shapes to cut out. But the good thing about this is you can do a kind of imperfect job, and then you can go back in with your watercolours at the end to fill in any bits that you've missed or anything that looks a little bit too stark and white. Again, pointy flowers are not advised. Now we're up to the cover layer. I knew that I wanted a rounded rectangle shape, and I knew that I didn't want it to be too perfect, so I just sketched it out and then cut it out and then popped all of my layers together just to check how everything looks together roughly, so I could go back in and make any changes if I needed to. I toyed with the idea of doing a title or some lettering on the cover piece, but I decided it was a little bit too finicky and I just wanted to keep it loose and fun. Then I added some little love hearts, because who doesn't love a love heart? And going back in and shading the flowers to give them some depth. Now I'm making the accordion pieces and measuring out equal distance lines and folding it one way and then the other way to make the accordion shape, and making sure I have enough layers for each of my painting layers to slot into. Next we've got our PVA glue, and first do your background layer. At this stage I realised it was going to be a little bit tricky because, as I mentioned before, I did separate pieces rather than full layers for each one. So this is where it would be helpful to have a full piece with a little border around each, and then it's much easier to stick in. These clips that I used are actually for quilting, but they came in handy for making sure everything was stuck down just until it dries. You could definitely also use paper clips or bulldog clips for this. Also make sure you're not using too much glue because it's just going to get messy. So I clipped it together just until it was dry. And there you have it. This is your beautiful little memory of going outside, touching the grass, seeing the sights, listening to the sounds of nature, and maybe it's a nice little reminder every time you look at it that it is really nice outside and you should do it more often. Thanks so much for joining me to make a memento of our trip outside. I'll see you next time.